for shame. Yo, today we're talking about separation of powers and checks and balances, which are the two other main principles of government that the Constitution sets into place. And one big thing to remember about this lesson today and all the stuff we've been doing is that these same principles apply not just to the federal government in Washington, D.C., but also to the state government in Baton Rouge. So these things are going to be the same for both the state and the federal government. So let's get started. So separation of powers, just a review from last year, that's the division of power into those three branches. And you may be thinking, why did they split up the power into three branches? The biggest idea is because they didn't want anybody to get too powerful, just like this picture shows. That was exactly right at the end of the revolution. That was exactly what they were thinking. They knew that the king had had too much power, and that's why the king had put all the taxes on them that they didn't think were fair. And so when they made their own government, the Americans made sure that nobody got too much power. They separated the power into three different branches. The first of those branches is the executive branch. And this year, we're going to go into a lot more detail than we did last year about each of these branches. So not only does the executive branch enforce the law, but the president, who is the executive, has the power to do other things too, such as control the army, make treaties, and issue executive orders. Executive orders are basically the same things as law. He can only issue executive orders that don't go against other laws that Congress has passed, though. So he's a little bit limited in his power. Second branch is the legislative branch. Their main job is to make laws. And remember, there's a legislative branch at the state level too. You have state representatives and state senators that also make laws just for the state of Louisiana. This picture right here is showing you what the legislative branch looks like in Washington, D.C. These are all the people who get together and write laws and make laws and vote on what laws are going to be passed for the entire country. So they make those laws. They also have the power to declare war. They have the power to change taxes. And they have the power to decide the budget, so decide how the government is going to spend its money. And I'm sure you remember this from last year, but just to review, the legislative branch is divided up into the House of Representatives and the Senate, and that's true on the federal level as well as the state level. Third branch and last branch, but definitely not the least important, is the judicial branch. Their job is to interpret the laws and review the laws. They decide how the law is going to work. When people disagree about a law, they come to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court makes that decision. There are 9 justices on the Supreme Court. That way they can never have a tie. Right? It's usually most of the votes are like 4-5 or 5-4. Sometimes they all agree on something, but usually it's split down the middle, and someone always has to win. Second principle for today is checks and balances. Checks and balances are ways in which each branch has some power over the other branches. And these two were made so that no one could get too much power. The first check or balance is appointment. An appointment is the president can pick new Supreme Court justices when old ones retire. Second one is legislative review. When the president picks the new Supreme Court justices, Congress, that's the legislative branch, gets to review the president's picks and decide if they are okay or not okay. For example, if Barack Obama is the president and he decides to pick his wife, Michelle Obama, to be a Supreme Court justice, Congress is going to look at that and they're going to think that's a little bit fishy. They're not going to like that. So they're going to turn down Michelle Obama because they know that they would work too closely together, and that might cause the president to have too much power. Third one is a veto. Veto, the president gets to say no to a law that Congress passes. So Congress gets to make laws, but the president has that final say. But not quite final, because Congress, with a 2/3 of a vote, can make a law even though the president vetoed it. Fifth one, and second to last, is judicial review. And this is where the Supreme Court can decide if laws or actions are constitutional. So the Supreme Court really has the final say if a law can be a law or not. So you see, as these laws get made, you've got Congress that decides if they want it to be a law, the president can veto, the Supreme Court has the power of judicial review. All these people look at laws to make sure that they are good enough to be laws in our country. Last one, and this is the biggest one, is impeachment. This was one of the first things that the people who wrote the Constitution wrote in. They wrote impeachment, that Congress and the House and Senate, meaning the House and Senate, can kick the president out for breaking the law. So if the president is starting to get too much power, they're going to impeach him and make sure that he gets cut down, make sure that the balances remain in place, and that the powers stay separated. This chart right here kind of shows a little bit how this works. Like, you've got the judicial branch. They have these powers to check the executive and to check the legislator, right? They can declare those unconstitutional. The legislative branch can do these things, confirm or reject appointments by the executive. So that's going to be here and here. So you're seeing how each of the branches have powers against each other. Big idea for today and for the rest of this unit as well is that all of these things are not just on the federal level with the president and the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C., but they're also on the state level with the governor, the Louisiana Supreme Court, the Louisiana Senate, the Louisiana House of Representatives. Remember, you have both of those governments, and they both have the power to make laws over your life here in Louisiana. So we're going to do some practice figuring out what check and balance could be used. I'm going to read it out loud, and then you can answer the question about it. So number one goes, many people in Congress don't like the new healthcare system. Congress passed a law to take it away, but the president thinks it should stay. What can he do to stop Congress from passing a law to take it away? What power does the president have to stop that from becoming a law? Number two, the president was low on cash and sold secrets about our nuclear weapons to China. China gave him $1 million for the secrets. Congress is furious, and they know that he broke the law. What can they do to check the president? Congress is trying to pass a law that says the president will only earn $20,000 a year. The president is furious about this new law, and he vetoes it. Congress still wants to make it a law. What can Congress do to check the president back? The Supreme Court is upset that the president sent warplanes to Pakistan to hunt for Osama bin Laden. They don't believe he had the power to do this because Congress did not declare war first. How can the judicial branch check the president? One of the Supreme Court's justices really doesn't like the president. He says that everything the president does is unconstitutional. But another justice has just retired. How can the president use the opportunity to check the Supreme Court? So, because I know this is a lot of information and it kind of comes on really fast, it's a lot of facts, we're going to be doing a lot of review for the next few days. At the end of every lesson, you're going to have this section where you go through and answer some questions about all the stuff that we've learned so far. This is part of your grade. Make sure you try your hardest on these questions. Both the states and the national government have a legislative branch. What is similar about the legislative branch at the state and federal level? Mark all of the following that are federal powers. Think about some of them might also be shared powers, because the federal shares those powers with the state. Everything that's federal. 2. Mark all the following that are state powers. Some of them might be shared. Now mark all the ones that are just shared powers, that they both have. What does federalism mean? Because of federalism, how many governments do you have? What does separation of powers mean? This is from today. What does checks and balances mean? Look at the following diagram. Which one of those is it showing?